The evening crowd at the Blue Note was thinning out as the last notes from the piano faded into the soft buzz of conversation. A few customers lingered over half-empty wine glasses, while others settled their bills and headed into the cool night air. The jazz club had been around for nearly 30 years, its walls soaking up thousands of melodies and countless stories. May moved between the tables with practiced ease, balancing empty plates on one arm while wiping down surfaces with her free hand. At 28, she'd been working at the Blue Note for 3 years and knew the rhythm of the place better than most. Monday nights were slow, Thursdays picked up with the weekend crowd, and Sundays brought in an older group who preferred the gentler classics. "Another wonderful night," said Mr. Chen, the elderly man who always sat at table 7. He came every Tuesday and Friday, ordered the same chicken dish with extra vegetables, and left a generous tip. "Glad you enjoyed it," May replied with a warm smile. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, her eyes briefly darting toward the piano in the corner. The old grand piano, with its polished black surface reflecting the dim lights, seemed to watch her back. The musician tonight had been new, a young man with quick fingers and a nervous smile who played well enough but lacked the soul that made this place special. May had noticed the slight disappointment in the regulars' eyes, though they were too kind to say anything. "You heading home soon?" asked Danny, the bartender, as she wiped down glasses behind the counter. Her bracelets clinked softly against each other as she worked. "Got a few more tables to clean," May replied, stacking dirty dishes onto a tray. "You can go if you want. I'll lock up." Danny hesitated. "You sure? It's pretty late, I'm sure. Go home to your kids." With a grateful nod, Danny grabbed her jacket and bag. "See you tomorrow, then. Don't stay too long." The door closed behind Danny with a soft jingle of bells, leaving May alone in the club. This was her favorite time, the quiet after everyone left when the space belonged just to her. She finished wiping down the tables, swept the floor, and made sure everything was ready for tomorrow. All the while, the piano waited. When the cleaning was done, May stood in the middle of the empty room listening to the silence. Outside, cars occasionally passed by, their headlights briefly illuminating the windows before disappearing again. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen, and somewhere in the building, pipes creaked as they cooled. Her feet carried her to the piano before she made a conscious decision to approach it. The bench was still warm from the pianist who had played earlier. May ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing down, feeling the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. How many hands had touched these same keys over the years? How many dreams had been played out on this very piano? "Just one," she whispered to herself, glancing around the empty room. "No one will know." Taking a deep breath, May pressed down on a key. The clear note rang out, hanging in the air like a question. Then another note, and another, until her fingers remembered what they had tried so hard to forget. The truth was, May wasn't just a waitress. Or rather, she hadn't always been just a waitress. Once she had been a promising piano student at the city's top music school. Her teachers had used words like gifted and natural talent. Her parents had sacrificed everything to pay for lessons since she was 5 years old. Then life happened. Her father got sick during her second year of school. The medical bills piled up. Her mother took on extra shifts at the factory, but it wasn't enough. May had no choice but to drop out and find work. The dream of becoming a concert pianist faded away, replaced by the practical needs of survival. Now, sitting at the piano for the first time in years, something stirred inside her. Her fingers moved across the keys, playing a simple melody she had learned as a child. It was rusty at first, with wrong notes and hesitations, but soon muscle memory took over. The piece was Debussy's Clair de Lune, a song about moonlight. As she played, May closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. Each note felt like coming home after a long journey. She had forgotten how much she loved this, how alive she felt with music flowing through her. When she finished the piece, the final notes lingered in the air. May opened her eyes, half expecting to find someone watching her. But the club remained empty. Just her and the piano and the ghosts of what might have been. A loud bang from the kitchen made her jump. Heart racing, she quickly stood up from the piano bench, as if caught doing something wrong. It was probably just the old pipes, but it broke the spell. May checked her watch and gasped. It was nearly midnight. She'd been playing longer than she realized. As she gathered her things to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from Lou, the club manager. Bad news. Tony, the regular pianist, has the flu. Doc says he's out for at least a week. I'm trying to find a replacement, but it's short notice. Might have to cancel the weekend shows if I can't find anyone. Disaster. Me stared at the message, her mind racing. The weekend shows were the busiest time for the Blue Note. Without music, customers would go elsewhere. The club was already struggling to stay afloat in a city where rent prices kept climbing. Her fingers hovered over the phone, tempted to type something she might regret. Could she offer to help? After years of not playing seriously, would she even be good enough? The piano seemed to whisper to her from across the room. It knew her secret, knew what she was capable of if she found the courage. Another message came through. Any ideas? Know any pianists looking for gigs? May bit her lip, looking back at the piano. In the dim light, it almost seemed to nod at her, encouraging her to take a chance. Maybe, she typed back. Let me think about it. Walking home that night, May couldn't stop thinking about how it felt to play again. Her apartment was a small studio on the third floor of an old building 10 blocks from the club. It wasn't much, but it was hers. No piano, though. There had never been room for one, and anyway, she had packed away that part of her life. Until tonight. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights. Playing the piano had awakened something she had tried to bury. For 3 years, she had convinced herself that she was happy enough. She had a steady job, a roof over her head, and enough money to occasionally help her parents with their bills. What more could she ask for? But the music? The music had always been there, waiting beneath the surface. May pulled out an old shoebox from under her bed. Inside were programs from recitals she had performed in, sheet music from her favorite pieces, and a few photographs of her at the piano as a child. Her fingers traced the edges of a particularly worn piece of sheet music, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It had been her audition piece for music school. Could she still play it? Would her fingers remember the complex runs and emotional dynamics? Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would come in early to the club and try it out. If she could still play well enough, maybe, just maybe, she would offer to fill in until Tony recovered. The thought both terrified and excited her. What if she failed? What if everyone laughed at the waitress who thought she could be a pianist? But what if she succeeded? What if this was the second chance she never thought she'd get? As she finally drifted off to sleep, May could almost hear the piano from the Blue Note, its music following her into her dreams. For the first time in years, those dreams weren't about serving tables or counting tips. They were about sitting on that bench under the spotlight, letting her music tell the story she had kept hidden for so long. The piano had whispered, and something inside her had begun to transform. Morning light filtered through the windows of the Blue Note as May unlocked the front door. She had barely slept, her mind racing with memories of music and possibilities that she hadn't allowed herself to consider for years. She'd arrived 2 hours before her shift was scheduled to begin, clutching a small bag containing the sheet music she'd dug out from her old collection. The club looked different in daylight, less magical, more worn. Chairs were stacked on tables, and the cleaning supplies she'd used last night still sat on the bar counter. But the piano remained magnificent, a dark island in a sea of morning light. May set down her things and walked straight to it. No hesitation this time. She pulled out the bench and sat down, placing her sheet music on the stand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she positioned them over the keys. Just practice, she whispered to herself. No pressure. She began with scales, simple exercises she'd done thousands of times as a student. Her fingers were stiff at first, missing notes and struggling to find their rhythm, but gradually the familiar patterns came back to her. Up and down the keyboard she went, increasing in speed and complexity. After 20 minutes of warm-up, she felt ready to attempt something more challenging. She opened her worn copy of Chopin's Nocturne and took a deep breath. The first few notes were tentative, like a person testing thin ice. Then as confidence grew, she leaned into the music, letting the piece build and flow. It wasn't perfect. Years without proper practice had taken their toll. Her timing wavered in places, and some of the more technically demanding passages caused her to stumble. But the heart of the music, the emotion, the story it told, that part came back easily as if it had never left her. So absorbed was she in playing that she didn't notice the door opening or footsteps approaching until a voice broke her. Concentration, I didn't know you could Play. May's hands froze on the keys as she turned to find Lou, the club manager, standing a few feet away with a look of astonishment on his face. He was a stocky man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. Heat rushed to May's cheeks. I was just... She stood up quickly, nearly knocking over the bench. I'm sorry. I should have asked permission. Lou waved away her apology, moving closer to the piano. How long have you played? May hesitated. Since I was 5. But I haven't really played in years. Not seriously, anyway. You sounded serious enough to me. Lou leaned against the piano, studying her with new interest. Where did you learn? The question opened a door May had kept firmly shut. I studied at the conservatory for almost 2 years. Lou's eyebrows shot up. The conservatory? That's the best music school in the city. What happened? May looked down at her hands, those hands that had once been destined for concert halls. Life happened. My father got sick. We needed money for medical bills. I had to drop out and work. She shrugged, trying to make it seem less significant than it was. It's fine. It was a long time ago. And now you're a waitress. Lou said it as a simple statement of fact, but May felt the weight of all that could have been in those words. I'm a good waitress, she said with a hint of defensiveness. Lou smiled. The best. But apparently you're much more than that. He glanced at his phone. I just got a message from the replacement pianist I found for the weekend. He's got another gig and can't make it. That's 2 pianists down and our busiest weekend coming up. He looked at May thoughtfully. Unless... May's heart began to race. Unless what? Unless you'd be willing to fill in. Just until Tony recovers. The offer hung in the air between them. May felt dizzy with the possibility of it. I don't know if I'm good enough, she said. It's been so long and I'm really rusty and... Play something else for me, Lou interrupted. Something you know well. May hesitated, then sat back down at the piano. What should she play? Her mind raced through the pieces she used to know by heart. She settled on Debussy's Reverie, a dreamlike piece that had always seemed to play itself through her fingers. As she began to play, the morning light, the club, even Lou seemed to fade away. There was only the music, gentle, flowing like water over stones. The piece spoke of longing and memory, of dreams half forgotten and rediscovered. It was her story somehow translated into sound. When the final notes faded, May looked up to find Lou watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You'll need to practice, he said finally. A lot, but yes, you're good enough. Really? May could hardly believe what she was hearing. Really? Lou smiled. We can work around your waitressing duties for a few days so you have time to prepare. The weekend shows start at 8, 3 sets of 45 minutes each with breaks in between. Can you handle that? Could she? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. 3 years ago, she wouldn't have questioned her ability to play for that long. But now I can try, she said finally. But what about the regulars? They're expecting a professional, not the person who usually brings their drinks. Let me worry about that. Lou waved a hand dismissively. Besides, Tony doesn't draw crowds because he's a professional. He draws crowds because he plays with heart. And from what I just heard, you've got plenty of that. He checked his watch. I've got deliveries coming in soon. Why don't you keep practicing until your shift starts? Make a list of the pieces you feel comfortable playing and we'll talk more later. After Lou left for his office, May sat in stunned silence. Had that really happened? Was she actually going to perform this weekend? Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from her mother. Working late tonight. Don't forget to eat dinner. Love you. May stared at the message, wondering what her parents would say if they knew what she was about to do. They had been heartbroken when she'd left music school, perhaps even more than she had been. They'd never said it, but she knew they felt responsible for the end of her dream. Would they be happy about this opportunity? Or would it just remind them of what could have been? She decided not to tell them yet. Better to wait until after the weekend, when she would know whether this was just a brief return to an old love or the beginning of something new. For the next few hours, May practiced with an intensity she hadn't felt in years. She made a list of pieces she remembered well enough to perform, some classical, some jazz standards that would fit the Blue Notes atmosphere. Her fingers began to remember their old confidence, though they tired more quickly than they used to. When customers began arriving for lunch, May reluctantly closed the piano and changed into her waitress uniform in the small back room. As she tied her apron and tucked her hair behind her ears, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same as always, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a light there that had been missing for a long time. The lunch shift passed in a blur. May took orders, delivered food, and cleaned tables with her usual efficiency. But her mind was elsewhere, counting through measures, working out fingerings for difficult passages, planning her program for the weekend. Several times, she caught Lou watching her with an amused expression, as if he could see the music playing in her head. "Earth to May," Danny laughed, waving a hand in front of her face as they worked side by side behind the bar. "You've been pouring water into that glass for about a year now." May looked down to find the glass overflowing. "Sorry," she said, quickly grabbing a towel to mop up the spill. "Just distracted, I can see that." "What's going on with you today?" May hesitated. She wasn't ready to share her news with everyone yet. It still felt too fragile, too new. "Just tired," she said. "Didn't sleep well." Danny didn't look convinced, but she let it go. By the end of her shift, May's feet ached from standing all day, but her mind was still racing with music. She had one more day, tomorrow, to prepare before her first performance on Friday night. As she was leaving, Lou called her into his office. "I made some calls," he said. "Found someone who can cover your waitressing shifts this weekend so you can focus on the music." "Really?" May hadn't even thought about that aspect of the arrangement. "But won't that be expensive for the club?" Lou shrugged. "Consider it an investment. If you bring in the crowds like I think you might, it'll be worth it." He handed her a key. "This is for the side door. Come in as early as you want tomorrow to practice. The piano tuner will be here at 10. May clutched the key, overwhelmed by his confidence in her. "Thank you," she said. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Lou smiled. "Now go home and rest those fingers. You've got a big weekend ahead." As May walked home through the busy evening streets, the city seemed different somehow. The same buildings, the same crowded sidewalks, but everything felt full of possibility. For the first time in years, she wasn't just moving through her life. She was moving toward something. The piano had whispered, and she had finally found the courage to answer. Friday evening arrived too quickly. May stood in the small back room of the Blue Note, staring at her reflection in the cloudy mirror. She hardly recognized herself. Instead of her usual black pants and white shirt, the waitress uniform she'd worn for 3 years, she was wearing a deep blue dress that Lou's wife had lent her for the occasion. It was simple but elegant, falling just below her knees with a modest neckline. Her dark hair, usually tied back in a practical ponytail, now framed her face in soft waves. "You look like a real pianist," she whispered to her reflection, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The door opened and Danny peeked in. "Wow," she said, eyes widening. "Look at you." May turned away from the mirror, suddenly self-conscious. "Is it too much?" "Are you kidding?" "It's perfect." Danny came fully into the room. "But why didn't you tell me?" "Lou just announced to the staff that you're filling in for Tony tonight. I had to hear it from him." "I'm sorry," May said. "I was going to tell you, but it all happened so fast and I wasn't sure if I could really do it until..." "Until what?" "Until I actually sit down and play in front of everyone." May's voice trembled slightly. "What if I freeze up? What if I forget everything? What if they hate it?" Danny took May's hands in hers. "Listen to me. I've worked with you for 3 years. In all that time, I've never seen you mess up an order, even on our busiest nights. You never drop things. You never forget what people like or don't like. You're the most focused person I know." She squeezed May's hands. "If you can handle the Saturday night dinner rush, you can handle this." May gave a shaky laugh. "It's not quite the same thing." "No," Danny agreed. "This matters more to you, which is exactly why you're going to be amazing." She glanced at her watch. "It's 7:30. The place is filling up fast. Lou says we've got more reservations than usual for a Friday." May's stomach clenched. "More people to disappoint if I'm terrible, or more people to impress when you're brilliant," Danny countered. "Now come on. Lou wants you to have something to eat before you go on." May followed Danny to the kitchen, where the cook had prepared a light meal for her. But she could barely eat, her appetite lost to nerves. She managed a few bites and some water, then spent the remaining time before her performance reviewing her music selections in her head. At 10 minutes to 8, Lou appeared at her side. "Ready?" May took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." Lou led her through the kitchen and down the short hallway that opened onto the main floor of the club. May had walked this path thousands of times as a waitress, but tonight it felt like a strange new territory. When they reached the edge of the dining area, she froze. The Blue Note was packed. Every table was full, and extra chairs had been brought in to accommodate the crowd. The low buzz of conversation filled the room, punctuated by the clink of glasses and silverware. The lights had been dimmed except for a soft spotlight that illuminated the piano in the corner. "I can't do this," May whispered, panic rising in her chest. "Lou, I'm sorry, I thought I could, but you can," Lou said firmly. "And you will, look." He pointed to a table near the front. "That's Mr. Chen in his usual spot. And over there is Mrs. Wu, who always orders the fish. And there's the couple who come every Friday and hold hands across the table." He turned to face her. "These are the same people you've been serving for years. They already like you. Tonight you're just showing them a different side of yourself." May took a shaky breath. "What do I say to them?" "Nothing if you don't want to. Or just say hello and start playing. It's up to you." Lou gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then stepped out into the dining area. The conversations quieted as he made his way to the piano. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice carrying across the room without needing a microphone. "As some of you know, Tony is out sick this weekend." A murmur of disappointment rippled through the crowd. "But we're very fortunate to have found a talented replacement." Lou turned toward where May stood in the shadows. "Many of you already know her as the person who brings your favorite dishes to your table. Tonight she's going to bring you something different. Please welcome our very own Maylene to the piano." A smattering of surprised applause broke out as May stepped into the light. She recognized several faces in the crowd, regular customers who'd never seen her as anything but their waitress. Some looked curious, others skeptical, but all were watching her with interest as she made her way to the piano. The bench felt different tonight, somehow higher or lower than when she'd practiced. The keys looked strange under the spotlight. May's hands trembled as she arranged her sheet music, though she doubted she'd be able to read it through her nervousness. "Good evening," she said quietly, surprised that her voice worked at all. "Thank you for coming tonight." Then, before she could think too much about what she was doing, May placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. She'd chosen to start with a piece she knew by heart, a gentle Chopin nocturne that had always calmed her. The first few notes were hesitant, her fingers stiff with anxiety. But as the music began to flow, something shifted inside her. The room, the audience, even her own doubt seemed to recede, leaving only the conversation between her hands and the piano. By the time she reached the middle of the piece, May had forgotten to be nervous. She was lost in the music, letting it speak through her as it had done in her practice sessions. The difference was that now others were listening too, breathing with the rise and fall of the melody, leaning forward in their seats as the music built to its emotional peaks. When she finished the nocturne, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the applause began, tentative at first, then growing stronger. May looked up, startled back into awareness of where she was and what she was doing. She saw surprise on many faces and something else too, appreciation. Encouraged, she moved into her next piece, a livelier Schubert impromptu that showcased more technical skill. Her confidence grew with each measure, her body remembering what her mind had feared it had forgotten. By the time she reached the final section of the piece, she was playing with a freedom and expression that she hadn't felt in years. The applause after this piece was immediate and enthusiastic. May felt a smile spread across her face, a genuine smile of pure joy. This was what she had been missing all these years without fully realizing it. This connection, this sharing of something beautiful with others. For the rest of the first set, May alternated between classical pieces and jazz standards that suited the Blue Note's atmosphere. With each song, she felt more at ease, more herself. By the time she announced a short break, she was glowing with a happiness that radiated from within. As she made her way to the bar for a glass of water, customers stopped her to offer compliments and ask questions. "I had no idea you could play like that. Where did you study? Will you be here tomorrow night too?" May answered as best she could, still somewhat dazed by the positive reception. When she reached the bar, Danny handed her a cold glass of water with a huge smile. "What did I tell you?" Danny said. "You're a hit. Look at them all, they can't stop talking about you." It was true. The room was buzzing with conversation, and May could tell from the glances in her direction that she was the main topic. "It feels unreal," she admitted, taking a grateful sip of water, "like I'm watching someone else living my life. Well, get used to it. From the look on Lou's face, I'd say you've got yourself a regular gig if you want it." The thought sent a thrill through May. Could that actually happen? Could she really reclaim this part of herself that she'd thought was lost forever? Before she could dwell on it too long, Lou approached, beaming. "May, you've been holding out on us. The crowd loves you. I've already had people asking if you'll be playing next weekend, too." "But what about Tony?" May asked. "Tony's a professional. He plays at 3 different clubs in the city. I'm sure we can work something out if you're interested in a regular spot." The offer took May's breath away. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll finish tonight's performance first," Lou laughed. "Your break's almost over and people are waiting." As May made her way back to the piano for her second set, she noticed something had changed in how people looked at her. There was respect in their eyes now, and a new kind of interest. She wasn't just the quiet waitress anymore. She was Maylin, the pianist who had surprised them all. She settled back onto the bench, feeling more at home there than she had in years. As her fingers touched the keys to begin the next piece, she realized that the piano wasn't just whispering to her anymore. It was singing. And through its song, she was transforming not only the room but herself as well. The woman who played through the second set was not the same one who had nervously approached the piano an hour earlier. This May was confident, expressive, alive with the joy of rediscovering her true passion. And as the music flowed through her and out into the room, she knew that whatever happened next, she would never again try to silence the music inside her. Word spread quickly about the waitress who could play piano like a dream. By Saturday night, the Blue Note had a line stretching down the block with people hoping for a chance to witness what everyone was talking about. Lou had to turn away dozens of hopeful customers who hadn't made reservations. For May, the weekend passed in a blur of music and applause. Each performance built her confidence, and by Sunday evening she played with a freedom and joy that made the audience hold their breath during the quiet passages and break into spontaneous applause after particularly moving moments. When the final notes of her last piece faded away on Sunday night, the crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. May stood from the piano bench, her cheeks flushed with happiness as she bowed. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined such a response. "Same time next weekend?" someone called from the audience. May looked to Lou, who stood at the back of the room. He gave her an encouraging nod. "I'd love that," she replied, her voice stronger and more certain than it had been just 3 days ago. The crowd cheered again before reluctantly beginning to gather their things to leave. As they filed out, many stopped to shake May's hand or leave generous tips in the jar that Danny had placed near the piano, labeled "For the Artist" in Danny's looping handwriting. When the last customer had gone, the staff gathered around May with congratulations and questions. "Where did you learn to play like that? Why didn't you tell us you were so talented? Are you really coming back next weekend?" May answered as best she could, still somewhat dazed by everything that had happened. Finally, Lou shooed everyone away. "Let the woman breathe," he said good-naturedly. "It's been a big weekend for all of us." As the others drifted away to finish closing tasks, Lou sat down at one of the tables and motioned for May to join him. "You've changed this place," he said simply. May glanced around the now empty club. "It feels like it changed me." Lou smiled. "That too." He pulled out a small notebook and a pen. "So let's talk about making this arrangement permanent. Tony's been wanting to cut back his schedule anyway. He'd still play Mondays and Tuesdays, but Wednesday through Sunday could be yours if you want them." May's heart leapt. "Really? Really? We'd need to talk salary, of course. It wouldn't be as much as you make with tips from waitressing, at least not at first. But if the crowds keep coming like they did this weekend," Lou shrugged. "Who knows?" Before May could respond, the front door of the club opened despite the closed sign hanging in the window. A tall woman in an expensive-looking coat stepped inside. Her sharp eyes scanned the room before landing on May. "Ms. Lynn?" the woman asked, walking toward their table. "I'm Grace Powell from Horizon Records. May I have a moment of your time?" Lou and May exchanged surprised glances. Horizon Records was one of the biggest independent music labels in the city. "Of course," May said, standing to greet the woman. "Please, sit down." Grace Powell took a seat, placing her sleek leather bag on the table. "I was here last night," she explained. A friend mentioned there was something special happening at this club, and I must say, she wasn't exaggerating. She fixed May with an appraising look. Your playing is remarkable. Raw in places, certainly, but with a quality that can't be taught. Thank you, May said, unsure how else to respond. I'll get straight to the point, Grace continued. Horizon is putting together a showcase of emerging pianists next month at the Phillips Concert Hall. We'd like you to participate. May stared at her, certain she'd misheard. The Phillips? But that's the premier venue in the city, yes. Grace smiled. Each pianist will perform 3 pieces. It's a significant opportunity for exposure. Many talent scouts and music directors attend our showcases looking for new artists to feature. I don't understand, May said, her voice faint. I'm just a waitress who used to study music. I'm not a professional pianist. Grace raised an eyebrow. After what I heard last night, I'd disagree. But if you're concerned about your readiness, we could arrange for some coaching sessions before the event. She pulled a business card from her bag and placed it on the table. Think about it. Call me by Wednesday if you're interested. After Grace left, May sat in stunned silence, staring at the business card as if it might disappear if she looked away. Well, Lou said finally, that changes things. May looked up at him, suddenly worried. I haven't said yes yet, but you will. It wasn't a question. What about the job you just offered me? Lou leaned back in his chair. It'll still be here if you want it. But May, opportunities like this don't come along every day. You'd be crazy not to at least explore it. It's all happening so fast, May said, feeling overwhelmed. 3 days ago I was just your waitress. Now, she gestured helplessly, unable to find words for the whirlwind her life had become. Now you're remembering who you really are, Lou said gently. That night, May could barely sleep. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. The showcase at Phillips Concert Hall was an opportunity beyond anything she could have imagined. But was she ready for it? After years away from serious music, could she really stand on that prestigious stage and play alongside trained professionals? And what about her parents? They still didn't know about her performances at the Blue Note. How would they react to this news? By morning, she knew she needed to talk to them before making any decisions. She called her mother and asked if she could come over for lunch. Her parents lived in a small apartment across town, in the same building where May had grown up. It had been weeks since her last visit. Her waitressing schedule often conflicted with their days off. Her mother answered the door with a warm hug. May, what a nice surprise on a Monday. The apartment smelled of her father's cooking, ginger and garlic and the comfort of home. He appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Look who's here, her mother said. Our daughter finally remembers we exist, May laughed. I saw you just a few weeks ago. 3 weeks, her father corrected, giving her a quick hug. But who's counting? As they sat down to eat, May tried to figure out how to tell them her news. They chatted about everyday things. Her father's job at the electronics store, her mother's book club, the leaky faucet in their bathroom that the landlord still hadn't fixed. Finally, her mother fixed her with a knowing look. Something's different about you today. What's happened? May took a deep breath. I played piano this weekend. Her parents exchanged glances. At the Blue Note, May continued. The regular pianist got sick and they needed someone to fill in and I offered. You played in front of people? Her father asked quietly. After all this time? May nodded. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. How did it feel? Her mother asked, reaching across the table to take May's hand. Like coming home, May admitted. Like finding a part of myself I thought I'd lost forever. Her father's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I always knew you would find your way back to music. There's more, May said. Someone from Horizon Records was there. They've invited me to perform in a showcase at the Phillips Concert Hall next month. Her mother gasped. The Phillips? Oh, May. I haven't said yes yet, May hurried to add. It's a huge step and I'm not sure if I'm ready. I'd need to practice so much and I'd probably have to cut back my hours at the restaurant, which means less money and… Stop, her father said firmly. Do not make the same mistake twice. May fell silent, surprised by his tone. When you left music school, he continued, we understood. Family comes first and you wanted to help with the medical bills. We were proud of you for that sacrifice, but we never wanted it to be forever. He looked at her mother, who nodded in agreement. We never wanted you to give up your dream. Your father's right, her mother said. We've saved some money. Not much, but enough to help you if you need to work less while you prepare for this showcase. I can't take your money, May protested. You worked so hard for it. And what do you think we worked for if not for your happiness? Her father asked. When parents work, it's always with the hope that their children will have better lives, will follow their dreams. He smiled. Besides, we're not talking about supporting you forever. Just helping you take this one important step. Tears welled up in May's eyes. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I'm not good enough? What if I get up on that stage and freeze? What if everyone realizes I'm just a waitress pretending to be a real pianist? Her mother squeezed her hand. You were never just anything, Maylin, and you're not pretending. This is who you are, who you've always been, even when you were carrying plates instead of playing concertos. Later that afternoon, May sat in her apartment with Grace Powell's business card in one hand and her phone in the other. She thought about all that had happened in the past few days, how the piano's whisper had grown into a song she could no longer ignore, how the restaurant had transformed from just a workplace into the setting for her second chance, how she herself had transformed from someone going through the motions of life into someone truly living it. With a deep breath, she dialed the number. Grace Powell speaking. Ms. Powell. This is May Lynn from the Blue Note about the showcase. She closed her eyes, picturing herself on that grand stage, fingers dancing across the keys. I'd like to accept your invitation. There was a smile in Grace's voice as she replied, I was hoping you'd say that. After ending the call, May walked to the window of her small apartment. The city stretched out before her, the same buildings and streets she'd seen every day for years. But now they seemed filled with new possibilities, new paths she might take. The piano had whispered and she had listened. The waitress had transformed the room with her music, but more importantly, she had transformed her own life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the countless hours of practice, the nerves of performing on a prestigious stage, the uncertainty of where this new path might lead, May knew one thing for certain. She would face them with her hands on the keys and music in her heart. The month leading up to the showcase was the most intense of May's life. Each morning she woke at dawn to practice for 3 hours before heading to the Blue Note, where Lou had kept her on for weekend performances. After her shifts ended, she would practice more, often until her fingers ached and her eyes could barely stay open. Grace had arranged for May to work with a renowned piano teacher named Amara Patel, who had performed with orchestras around the world before settling in the city to teach. Their first meeting had been nerve-wracking for May. Show me what you're planning to play for the showcase, Amara had said without preamble when May arrived at her sun-filled studio. May sat at the gleaming grand piano, far nicer than the one at the Blue Note, and began to play the pieces she'd selected. A Bach prelude, a Chopin nocturne, and a more modern piece by Philip Glass. Amara listened with her eyes closed, her expression unreadable. When May finished, the older woman was silent for so long that May began to wonder if she'd made a terrible mistake. You have something special, Amara said finally, a genuine voice. But your technique has grown lazy during your years away from serious study. She sat beside May on the bench. We have a lot of work to do, and work they did. Amara was demanding but fair, pushing May to refine passages she thought were already perfect, challenging her to find deeper emotion in the music, and assigning technical exercises that made her fingers feel like they might fall off. But after each grueling lesson, May could hear the difference in her playing. More clarity, more control, more of herself in the music. 2 weeks before the showcase, disaster struck. May woke with a pounding headache and a fever that left her shivering despite the warm spring weather. The doctor diagnosed her with a severe flu and ordered complete bed rest. But I have to practice, May protested weakly. The showcase is in 2 weeks. And you'll be no good to anyone if you collapse on stage, the doctor replied firmly. Rest, drink fluids. No piano for at least 5 days. Those 5 days were among the hardest of May's life. She lay in bed, alternately sleeping fitfully and staring at the ceiling, imagining her fingers moving through the pieces she needed to perfect. When she wasn't drowsing or mentally practicing, she worried. The lost practice time seemed catastrophic. How could she possibly be ready now? On the 6th day, still weak but no longer feverish, May made her way to Amara's studio for her scheduled lesson. She expected her teacher to be disappointed or frustrated with the setback, but Amara surprised her. Sometimes the music needs to rest inside you, Amara said, handing May a cup of ginger tea. Let's not rush back to the difficult passages. Today we'll just play for the joy of it. They spent the lesson on simple pieces that required more feeling than technical skill. By the end, May felt something shift in her approach to the upcoming showcase. Yes, it was a huge opportunity. Yes, she wanted to play her best. But ultimately, this was about reconnecting with the music she loved, not about being perfect. This realization carried her through the remaining days of preparation. She still worked hard, but with a newfound sense of purpose and joy. Her playing took on a quality that even Amara noticed. There it is, Amara said during their final lesson. That's what will set you apart at the showcase. Not just skill, though you have plenty of that, but heart. Don't lose sight of that when you're on that stage. The night before the showcase, May returned to where it all began. The Blue Note was closed on Mondays, but Lou had given her a key. She let herself into the dark, empty club and made her way to the piano that had changed her life. For a while, she just sat there without playing, remembering the first time she'd stayed late and let herself touch the keys after years of denying herself that pleasure. How far she'd come since then. I thought I might find you here. May turned to see Lou standing in the doorway. Just wanted to visit an old friend, she said, running her hand along the piano's smooth surface. Lou pulled up a chair. Nervous about tomorrow? Terrified, May admitted. But also, ready, I think. You are. Lou nodded. I knew it from the first night you played here. Some people make music. Others become the music. You're one of the second kind. May smiled, touched by his confidence in her. Thank you. For everything. If you hadn't given me that chance, you would have found another way back to the piano, Lou said. Maybe not as quickly, but you would have found your way. The music was always inside you, waiting. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Will you play something? Lou asked finally. Just for old time's sake? May turned to the keys and began to play a simple melody she'd composed herself during the past month. It wasn't technically complex like the pieces she'd prepared for the showcase, but it held all the emotions of her journey, the longing, the rediscovery, the joy, the challenge, and most of all, the gratitude. When she finished, Lou's eyes were suspiciously bright. Now that, he said, is what the audience needs to hear tomorrow. That's not on the program, May said. Maybe it should be. The next evening, May stood backstage at the Phillips Concert Hall, peeking through the curtains at the rapidly filling auditorium. The space was enormous compared to the Blue Note, over 1,000 seats arranged in elegant curves with balconies rising in tiers above the main floor. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over everything. Impressive, isn't it? Grace appeared beside her. And nearly sold out, May's stomach clenched. How many performers are there tonight? 5, including you. Each pianist brings something different to the showcase. The woman on now specializes in romantic era composers. After her is a young prodigy who plays mostly Mozart. Then a jazz pianist, you, and finally a composer who performs his own works. May listened to the current performer, whose passionate interpretation of a Liszt piece was drawing enthusiastic applause. Everyone was so good, so professional. Doubt crept in again. What was she doing here, a waitress among trained musicians? A hand touched her shoulder. She turned to find her parents dressed in their finest clothes, their faces glowing with pride. You look beautiful, her mother said, straightening the simple black dress May had bought for the occasion. And nervous, her father added with a knowing smile. Just like before your first recital when you were 6. Remember what I told you then? May nodded. The piano is your friend. It wants you to succeed. Still true. He squeezed her hand. We should find our seats. We'll be right in the front row cheering the loudest. After they left, May did her warm-up exercises, trying to calm her racing heart. The jazz pianist was performing now, his lively improvisations drawing appreciative murmurs from the audience. Then it was her turn. As she walked onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinded her. The grand piano at center stage gleamed under the spotlights, its lid raised to project the sound. May took a deep breath and moved toward it, conscious of the hundreds of eyes following her progress. She bowed to the audience, then sat at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. As she placed her hands on the keys, a strange calm settled over her. This moment, this was what she had been missing all those years. Not just playing the piano, but sharing the music with others, creating something beautiful in a world that often felt too harsh. She began with the Bach, her fingers finding the complex patterns with a precision that would have seemed impossible a month ago. The piece flowed from her, filling the concert hall with its intricate beauty. Next came the Chopin Nocturne, the same piece she'd played that first night at the Blue Note. She closed her eyes for parts of it, letting the music carry her back to that moment of rediscovery. For her final piece, she was supposed to play the Philip Glass composition, a technically challenging work that had impressed Amara with its modern harmonies. But as she finished the Chopin, May made a decision. Instead of moving to the sheet music for the Glass piece, she took a deep breath and looked out at the audience. "For my final piece," she said, her voice stronger than she expected, "I'd like to play something I composed during these past weeks. It's called The Whisper, and it tells the story of how a piano changed my life." She began to play the simple, heartfelt melody she'd shown Lou the night before, expanding it now with harmonies that spoke of loss and finding, of silence and song. As the piece developed, she poured everything into it. Her years away from music, the night she'd first returned to the keys, the faces of those who had believed in her, Lou, Danny, her parents, Amara. The piece built slowly, growing in complexity and emotion until it reached a moment of pure joy, before settling into a gentle, hopeful conclusion. When the final note faded, there was complete silence in the hall. May opened her eyes, suddenly afraid she'd made a terrible mistake by changing the program. Then the applause began, tentative at first, then building into a wave that washed over her. People were standing, their faces alight with emotion. She saw her parents in the front row, tears streaming down their faces. Lou a few rows behind them, grinning broadly. Amara in the balcony nodding in approval. May stood and bowed, her heart so full it might burst. As she left the stage, Grace was waiting in the wings. "That wasn't the piece you submitted for the program," she said, but she was smiling. "I know," May said. "I hope it wasn't a problem. On the contrary, it was exactly what this showcase needed. Something real, something personal." Grace gestured toward the audience, still applauding. "They connected with your story. And that's what great music does. It tells a story that others can feel." In the reception after the performances, May was approached by several people with business cards and offers, a recording session, a small concert series, even a teaching position at a community music school. But the most meaningful conversation came later, after most of the crowd had dispersed. A woman about May's age approached her somewhat shyly. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "I used to play violin, but I gave it up years ago when life got complicated. Hearing your story, your music, it made me think maybe it's not too late for me either." May smiled, recognizing herself in the stranger's eyes. "It's never too late," she said. "The music is always there, waiting for you to come back to it." As she left the concert hall that night, surrounded by those who loved her, May looked up at the stars shining over the city. 1 month ago, she had been a waitress who once dreamed of being a pianist. Tonight, she was simply a musician who had found her way home. The piano had whispered, and in listening to it, she had transformed not just a room or an audience, but her entire world.